जय राधा मदाभा जय कुंज बिहारी राधा मदाभा जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधवा जय कुंज बिहारी जय गोपी जन भल्लाभा जय गिरिवरधारी जय गिरिवरधारी जय गोपी जन भल्लाभा जय गिरिवरधारी जय गिरिवरधारी यशोदनंदना जय ब्रज जन रंजना जय ब्रज जन रंजना जय यशोदनंदना जय ब्रज जन रंजना जय ब्रज जन रंजना जमुना तीरवनचारी जय कुंज बिहारी जय जमुना तीरवनचारी जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधवा जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधवा जय कुंज बिहारी जय कुंज बिहारी जय कुंज बिहारी। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर श्रीमद हिज डिवाइन ग्रेस AC भक्तिवेदांता स्वामी शिला प्रभुपाद की जय। ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर श्रीमद हिज डिवाइन ग्रेस Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki, ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shishiguru and Shigauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 1 second, change. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, entitled Liberation, Chapter 6, The Downfall of Saubhari Muni, texts 53 and 54. We read 54 together, I read 53 by myself. Evam vasangrihe kalam virakto nyashan ashtitaha vananjaga manujayus Panthyapati devataha. Translation. In this way, he passes life in household affairs for some time, but then he became detached from material enjoyment. To renounce material association, he accepted Vanaprastha order and went to the forest. His devoted wives followed him, for they had no shelter other than their husband. Text number 54. Tatra taptva tapas tikshnam atma darshanan atmavam sahaivagni bhiratmanam Jujoja paramatmani tatra tattva tapastikshnam atmadarshanan atmavam sahaivagni biratmanam Jujoja paramatmani Tatra tattva tapastikshnam Atmadarshanan atmavam Sahaivaknirviratmanam Jujoja paramatmani. Please chant. Tatra, in the forest, tattva, executing austerity, tapaha, the regulated principles of austerity, tikshnam, very severely, atmadarshanam, which helps self-realization, atmavan, conversing with the self, saha, with, eva, certainly, agnibihi, fires, atmanam, the personal self, jujoja, he engaged, parama atmani, dealing with the Supreme Soul. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. When Subala Muni, who was quite conversant with the self, went to the forest, he performed severe penances. In this way, in the fire at the time of death, he ultimately engaged himself in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport: at the time of death, fire burns the gross body. And if there is no more desire for material enjoyment, the subtle body is also ended. And in this way, a pure soul remains. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Tyakta deham punarjanma naiti. If one is free from the bondage of both the gross and the subtle material bodies and remains a pure soul, he returns home, back to Godhead, to be engaged in the service of the Lord. Tyakta deham punarjanma naiti man eti. He goes back home, back to Godhead. Thus, he appears as Subala Muni attained that perfection. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jananjana Salakaya Chakshur Ummilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prema. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nidinam Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvesha Shashvinavadi Pashatyade Vanchakalpatarvyasha kripa sindhu vyavacha patitanam pavanevyo vaishnavevyo namo namaha. So, Subala Muni, the explanation is that he came to his senses and realized, he was able to see the mistake that he's committed that deviated him from the path of self-realization. And then, recognizing the mistake, then he took the actions to correct it. And thus he took again the purpose of life to be self-realization. And he carried on his life in the material world in that way. When it's explained in text number 53, he carried on for some time like that. And then when it came the time, the right time, then he naturally moved to the next stage, from Grihastha ashram to Vanaprastha ashram. And he went to the forest and he performed severe austerities in the forest. Under the regulated principles of austerities. So he performed these austerities in a regulated manner. And so the natural evolution was there. And as the natural evolution is there, so that basically that one's purpose is self-realization. And one lives one's whole life with that understanding. And everything we do, both materially and spiritually, are meant to bring us to the point of self-realization. When that goal is obscure or almost sabotaged by material desires and attachments, then one becomes deviated, and then one's become implicated in all kinds of actions and reactions that brings one down in consciousness to a very precarious suffering condition. So the natural evolution of consciousness through the different stages of life, it is very scientific and perfectly designed and organized by Krishna himself. So then the progression towards detachment is very, very natural from being absorbed or being involved, not absorbed, but being involved in material affairs under the guidance of a self-realized soul, and also with the purpose of self-realization. The natural evolution is detachment. Detachment and knowledge of the absolute truth. Vairagya and Vidya. Vairagya and Vidya. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayoyata. So, by the practice of this pure devotional service, this devotion to the personality of Godhead, then the natural result is Vairagya and Vidya. It naturally comes. So one naturally moves to that stage, and ultimately, basically, you're getting ready for the last test. And the last test is death. It's the ultimate test of one's life. And it's quite extraordinary how Krishna designs, the experience for the living entity in the material world. And death is the ultimate experience that is completely incompatible with the spirit soul, with a living entity. There's many things that are incompatible in the experience of the material world, but death is the ultimately one, is the highest one. Because the temporary happiness is very incompatible to us. But you carry on. There's always the hope that you get it. It's around the corner, so you can get to that. You compete. You always had that hope that you figured it out in a way that you can actually sustain, your success and your happiness. Only if you can be as rich as Donald Trump or something, But the guy is always miserable, you see. But it doesn't work like that. So we have that hope. Same thing with disease or becoming old. I mean, you see right now at these days, pictures of women that are in their 70s, mid-70s, and they look like they're 30 years old. Somehow or other, by medical technology, they sort of make themselves, they stretch themselves to the max that, at one point, it's almost like the face is going to, if they stretch it a little more, it's just going to snap, But there's always a hope, that, we're going to do it. We can beat, the aging principle. Like that, But death is the ultimate one, because death completely destroys your sense of is the end of everything. No more self, no more identity, no more anything. There's no hope. After death, there's nothing. Everything is finished. Everything is finished. So the sense of that everything is finished, existence is finished, is the most incompatible experience for the living entity. So for the bewildered living entity, for an entity that is devoid of transcendental knowledge, the experience of death is the most perplexing and scary thing that they can ever face or imagine. To the point that we try in our materialistic society, death is made, it's just you try to make it in such a way that you just don't see it. You don't face it, you don't see it. Like most of us, we have very limited experience with death, with, being close to death. Because society in general arranges in such a way that you don't see it, you don't, even when you have to see the dead body that is already dead and sort of rotten, they already make some sort of arrangement to make it, last for longer so it doesn't start to disintegrate. And they dress it and make it up, put the whole thing so it looks like, like the person it's just sleeping, And in general, people who's dying, that the hospices and things like that, you only have workers, the family members and people, friends, acquaintances. You try to avoid that very much. It's just put it in some place that is exclusively for those type of people, and we don't get too much involved with that. You go, maybe if you have the responsibility, you go and visit, and then go. But different things with the people who work on those places, like nurses and doctors and things, that they have to see death every day. And usually, they have this sense of, the helplessness of death. However, because of lack of transcendental knowledge, there is something that blocks it. And that's what Maharaj Yudhisthira responded to the question of Yamaraj, testing Maharaj Yudhisthira. And he asked the question, what is wonderful? And Maharaj Yudhisthira, it was a riddle that he had to answer correctly. And he answered correctly. What is wonderful in this world? What is wonderful is that people are dying every day. We see that every day so many people are dying, but we live our life thinking that it's not going to happen to me. That's wonderful. That material energy have that capacity to sort of like put that veil of denial to the conditioned souls. It's amazing what material energy does. Like, although it's happening and it's happening, it's not going to happen to me. I live my life like that. And thus, the experience of death for the conditioned soul devoid of transcendental knowledge is terrible. It's terrible. To face, the end of everything. And if you don't have the shelter of transcendental knowledge and the shelter of Krishna, the understanding, then even if you're pious, the attachments to this world are so strong that the ultimate end of these attachments is too much for the living entity to go through. So in general, they leave their body with tremendous amount of fear, tremendous amount of anxiety, tremendous amounts of anger and frustration, and ultimately, is fear. That's why Krishna describes that at death there's the greatest fear or the greatest danger is there. It's a very serious thing, this ultimate test of death for the living entity, because at that moment is what is going to determine what's going to happen to you in the future. So there's three things that can happen, actually four things that can happen at that time. You fail, and then you go down into lower species of life. You fail, but you, according to your consciousness and your activities, you remain in the same, status that you have. You fail, but according to your pious activities, you elevate yourself to a higher position that you were right now. Or you actually pass the test, and just like Saubhari Muni, and Prabhupada point out the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Jamma karma chame divyanevan yo bhaditattvatah tyakta deham punar jamma neti man eti so Arjuna, that for those who comes at the time of death with perfect understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, His activities, His appearance, His pastimes, His relationship that He have with the living entities, and one who have that perfect understanding, at the time of death, he goes back home, back to Godhead, and he never comes back. So, death is a very important thing that one have to prepare for. Like, possibly some of you have friends that either in your family or acquaintance that study law. And then when they graduate from law, they have to prepare for this bar examination, no? And usually they're pretty anxious, because you can go through your whole, education, university education of law, and you can do you may have done very well during that, but if you don't pass this bar test, you can work. You don't get a job as a lawyer. In order to get your, the license that the country will give you to be a lawyer, you have to pass this test. So, people study, cram, like an anxiety until they pass. And sometimes they fail several times passing this test until they get it. So similarly, death is like that. Death will test the state of consciousness that we are. It's such an important thing. And for those who are pursuing transcendental knowledge, for those who are pursuing self-realization, this is always has been a very important question. And it has been always something that people paid great, careful attention to it. Because it's what you're preparing for life. So Arjuna did that. Arjuna asked Krishna in the beginning of chapter 8, he asked 8 questions, right? 6 questions. How many questions? Remember? Let me see. He asked, what is Brahman? What is the self? What is karma, fruitive activities? What is this material manifestation? What are the demigods? Who is the Lord of sacrifice who lives in the body? And then what happened at the time of death for those who are devotees? So 8 questions. So Krishna answered all those questions, but he took quite some time, to actually go to this, what happens? What happens to those engaged in devotional service? And how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? Because Krishna says already that if you're able to know him in truth, in tattva, then you go back home, back to Godhead. So Arjuna, how someone who is in devotional service can remember you? Someone who is in devotional service can remember you. And Krishna actually, he confirmed that, the importance of that. That is really what you're preparing for. So, the 3 verses, 5, 6, and 7 deal with that. Ante kale chame divyan evan yo smaram muktva kalevaram ja prajati samadbhavan jati nashtya trasamsaya. That whoever at the end of his life quits his body remembering me alone, smaram muktva kalevaram, at once obtain my nature. Of this there is no doubt. So Krishna confirms, Arjuna is asking, and Krishna confirms that particular truth, that one have to come to the end of one life prepared to remember Krishna. And if one does that, then, like Prabhupada said, not only your material body will be dissolved, but also your subtle body will be dissolved, and then what it remains is a pure soul, and then you go back home, back to Godhead. And then the next verse, text number 6, Jam jam vapi smaram bhavam tyayatyante kalevaram tam tam evaite kaunteya sadatat baba bhavitaha. That this is the other part. If one doesn't remember Krishna, if one is not ready to remember Krishna, then what happens? That whatever state of mind one have at the time of death, that's what's going to take us to our next body. So therefore, Krishna says the next verse, and that's the answer to the question of Arjuna. Therefore, tasmat sarveshu kaleshu man anusmarat yudhyacha mayarpita manobudhir man evaisya shasamsaya. That Therefore, Arjuna, always think of me. So how, Arjuna's question was how? How can a devotee remember hymns at the time of death? Or know hymns at the time of death? So Krishna says, now the practice that you do through your life, and this is basically what sadhana bhakti is, both in the Vaidya stage and in the Raganuga stage. That one always think of him, of Krishna. One always, he say, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna, and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me, and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will obtain me without doubt. So that's how, through our life, we basically preparing and training our mind to be focused simply on Krishna. We've been trained to have this Vyavashayatmika buddhi, this single-pointed intelligence that is only exclusively focused on the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So always thinking and carry on one activities. So the material activities we carry out, and at the same time devoting one's life to the service of Krishna. And that prepares one for the time of death. Similarly, Maharaj Parikshit asked the same question to Sukadev Goswami. When Sukadev Goswami entered the arena where Maharaj Parikshit was preparing for death, then he asked the question, what is the duty of someone who is about to die? And then Maharaj Sukadev Goswami, he answers, one should, this is in the first chapter, the highest perfection of human life achieved either by complete knowledge of matter and spirit, by practice of mystic powers, or by perfect discharge of occupational duty, is to remember the personality of Godhead at the end of life. So then he says, how? Let me see. He says one should worship, remember, chants, the glories of the Supreme Lord. Let me find that out here. Yes, O King, constant chanting of the holy names of the Lord after ways of the great authority is a doubtless and fearless way of success for all, including those who are free from all material desires, those who are desirous of material enjoyment, and those who are self-satisfied by dint of transcendental knowledge. What is the value of a prolonged life which is wasted, inexperienced by years in this world? Better a moment of full consciousness, because that gives one a start in searching after the supreme interest. And so go on. This first chapter of the second canto, Sukadev Goswami answering this question is quite fantastic and very, very to the point. That, again, is just being ready for death. And it's wonderful for the devotee, because you start to see life in a complete different manner. Even right now, as aspiring devotees, and still being afflicted by the bodily conception of life and attachments and desires. But because we are conducting our life to fulfill the purpose of self-realization, then you've been given the capacity to see life in a complete different way. And in fact, when it comes to facing that ultimate test, the devotee in general becomes ready. Is ready to go. And you see it. I have the experience to, the limited experience that I have with death. You have, I've seen some devotees, in the last stages, not necessarily when they left their body. I haven't seen anyone leave their body, being present in a situation like that. But, or personal, in videos I see, we see the video of Srila Prabhupada. But you see the state of consciousness of certain devotees, who were in the last stages of their life. And I have the experience of a very good friend who fell down. But his falling down was a very unfortunate one, because he went away from Krishna consciousness, committing very serious offenses to his spiritual master, His Holiness Sasru Maharaj. And the end of his life was full of anger. He died of AIDS, this devotee, Ganasham. And it was a very miserable death, because he committed an offense to a very dear and elevated devotee of Srila Prabhupada. Then he was devoid of that shelter, the shelter of Krishna consciousness. And he died in a very miserable manner, very sad. Then you see, His Holiness Bhaktitirtha Maharaj, seeing in the last stages of his life. And it was as brilliant as the sun, basically, its personality. They're pretty amazing. And our god brother who passed, Sanatan, Rupa Sanatan Prabhu, temple president in San Luis. You remember Raktak? Do you remember him? Rupa Sanatana? He was the president in San Luis. Yeah. Very wonderful. He was a very accomplished architect that he retired, in the height of his material accomplishments, and he became a devotee, and eventually he died of cancer. But his consciousness was he died in Vrindavan, and in a very wonderful, surrounded by devotees and, in great consciousness. And I have the experiences of my mother dying. It was very, very painful, all those last stages that she had to go through. And although she was a very pious lady, extremely intelligent and capable, like an intellectual type of intelligence, the bewilderment was so great that, although she have embraced, some history of transcendentalism. She was like a Buddhist, Catholic, some little Krishna consciousness, this and that. She took from everything, you know. So she was philosophical. That last stages of her life, everything was bewildered. I mean, she was put in a situation that she was so frustrated and angry that, you know, it was a very miserable death too. And there was no way of, you know, you trying to, we have spent, you know, like 3 weeks with her, or a month before she died, trying to, you know, remind her and take, you know, read Bhagavad Gita and things like that. And she was not able to take it because the bewilderment was so great, the attachment. Sridhar Maharaj, amazing, his state of consciousness, and like that. So the devotee becomes ready. And just recently read, even if you're not ready, but you have served Prabhupada or your spiritual master for your life, for, you know, with great sincerity and dedication, with sacrifice. If you have done that and you became dear to your spiritual master, even if you've fallen and you've gone really into an ayamil type of a state, then if you haven't committed an offense to the devotees and to your spiritual master, then there's so many cases of devotees who were taken back. So there's a story of Pritaputra Maharaj. He was a sannyasi, did so much service for Srila Prabhupada in Europe, France and, you know, Europe. And he used to travel, you know, preaching. So he did a lot of service. He was very strong. But after Prabhupada left his body, then Pritaputra Maharaj fell down and he, you know, went away. So he used to live in New York, and like, you know, in the Lower East Side, that it looked like a, you know, like a hell angel or something like that, biker, you know, long hair, like very straight long hair, bandana, sort of dirty clothes, you know, jeans and leather jacket and things like that, tattoos, and, you know, that was the Maharaj, you know. I mean, you see the pictures, it was like, you know, this, like those pictures of the, you know, Prabhupada's sannyasis, disciples, powerful, clean, beautiful, you know, like that. And then you see Pritaputra, you know, Prabhu was like, you know, all immense, you know, like rock and roll, sex, drugs and rock and roll, you know, people like, they live at night, they take drugs, you know, like type of thing. The skin is dull, you know, and that's how he looked. So he used to approach, you know, the Harinam when we were distributing prasadam. Otherwise, he keeps a distance. We see it in the distance, and he's sort of, you know, acknowledge, but always keep the distance. Never talk to us, you know. Maybe sort of some sort of acknowledgement when we give him prasadam. We go regularly after the day. If we have leftover prasadam, we go to Tomping Square and then give the prasadam. So apparently he went his life like that, you know. And apparently he got some terminal disease, and he was in the hospital in coma, and it became obvious that he was just dying. And whoever was there, the doctors were there, and someone else were there, people were there at a time just delivering, you know, if how much longer he's going to last in this coma. And I guess they were discussing about it. And then all of a sudden, as I was standing there, Pritaputra Prabhu just opened his eyes, stand up, and then the people who were there and the doctors were surprised, and he screams, looking at the door, "Prabhupada, you came!" And then die. So we hear of people who see the Yamadutas and they're just like at the time of death, and it's so scary that usually when people die, that's one of the things that is explained, that they pass water and stool. Usually out of fear, that's what happens. Imagine you seeing the Yamadutas. I mean, you see the paintings, and just imagine seeing the thing in person, dragging you. So, Pitu Putra sees Srila Prabhupada coming to take him. So, it's the greatest benediction we have. So anyway, but we may not be as lucky as Pitu Putra Prabhu, so we have to prepare ourselves for the time of death. Any comments or questions?
I've been wondering about this aspect of like this importance of remembering Krishna at the time of death. There's kind of this idea that like there's that idea that you just have to remember Krishna at the time of death. But the kind of a misconception might be like, as long, like whatever you do, but as long as you remember Krishna at that moment, like at the very moment you leave like your body, then you go back to Godhead. But even if you do a bunch of service, but in that moment you just somehow forget, then you don't go back to Godhead or something like that. Like I'm just trying to have a more mature understanding of what it means to like remember Krishna at the time of death, like.
Because it's not simple.
It's like scientific, like in that very moment you have to think exactly about Krishna perfectly. But if you like dedicated your whole life, but somehow you don't think of Krishna like very clearly when you're leaving your body at that very moment.
Can't remember where this verse appeared. I think is in the instructions that the Navayogendras was given to Maharaj Nimi, that says that, praying to Krishna to help them remember him at the time of death. I think maybe it was, is it the praise of Kulash? I can't remember where the verse comes, I have to see, but but how would I remember you when my body is disintegrating you, when this fire that Prabhupada explained, is in it, this fire is consuming, basically, according to what Prabhupada describes, the temperature of the body becomes, is like 100 and something, it's burning, so you're burning inside. The whole thing is disintegrated, breaking apart. And so the experience of this disintegration, I mean, your mind have to be so well trained. I mean, if I got a toothache, you go like, you can't concentrate. You can only, your consciousness goes to the pain. Imagine when the whole thing is just that experience. That's death. Fire is consuming the material body, and the subtle body is in, we're like, what's happening? So that's what we're preparing for. To be detached from the body that our consciousness is not affected by the material situation, circumstance. And that's not simple, so that's why it's, you really have to be in Krishna consciousness. You have to overcome that. So if you're not there, then you're gonna need some extra mercy. For the devotee, Prabhupada have said that even if you're not there, but you sincerely went through your life, like devoting your best to actually come to that point, even if you're not able to remember Krishna at the time of death, Krishna will force himself into your memory. That's one thing that I heard. The other one is that Lord Chaitanya will come and grab you by the Sika and will take you. And we hear Srila Prabhupada comes and then, picks you up too. So your spiritual master will come, So, but again, the qualification is that you go through your whole life, really, doing your best endeavor to get there. And if it happens that you fail, Krishna sees, this devotee I'm taking. Rakta Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. What will happen to the highly elevated holy men of other faiths at the time of death?
Well, it's the same principle. The same principle. If Arjuna asked that question, what happens to the highly elevated being, yogi, who comes to the time of death and doesn't achieve, perfection? What happened? And then Krishna said, he becomes elevated to the heavenly kingdom, and he enjoys life in the heavenly kingdom, and then comes back and take birth in a family of pure brahmanas or mercantile wealthy family, or a very well-off family that will have much greater facility to continue in their path to self-realization. So it's according to the consciousness. I mean, if the Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur described Jai Hare Krishna describes people of other religions still as Vaishnavas, but they're mixed devotees.
So it's like a preparatory ultimately to reach Krishna consciousness when people of other faiths.
At the end, really, it's all Krishna consciousness. So if the perfection of Christianity is Krishna consciousness, God consciousness. Krishna consciousness is God consciousness. So if they're able to have that connection, then it's all. They should go back to Godhead. But if not, then they will take birth in a pure family, or that they will facilitate the Christian consciousness.
So it's like according to your works, like during your life when you're preparing to go back. It's like Mother Teresa. She was a highly elevated soul, but she wasn't practicing Krishna consciousness. What do you think her fate might be? I mean, your opinion.
Yeah, I prefer, because we don't know. But for sure, we know that Mother Teresa, was a highly elevated, pious personality. who was dedicated to the service of people. However, she served meat to people and, beef. So there's an implication for that. Well, I don't know if beef, but meat. Maybe, I'm not sure if beef, maybe beef. I mean, if beef is very bad. So, but if it's not beef, then, if it's a lesser animal, but still. So, was she able to elevate, the God consciousness of the people that she helped? In some way, but she gave transcendental knowledge. Some. So, I don't know. For sure, we know that, wherever she is, she's continuing, her service and her path.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna. You mentioned the verse about just a little, Krishna says a little bit of advancement on this path saves one from the greatest fear. And from my understanding, the greatest fear would be to lose the human form of life and go down. And it made me think of the Bharat Maharaj, who was practicing devotional, I think he was practicing devotional service, and then he became a deer at the end of his next life. And I'm sure that's a pastime and for the Bhagavatam's sake. But I'm just wondering that, as you were saying, if someone's attached, we were given the different examples of the different types of people, and that this one you'll go down, or this one you'll be elevated. And I'm just wondering about, for example, we meet someone and we'll get them to chant Hare Krishna. For example, I went to the gym the other day, and just in conversation with the person, I gave one card, and he chanted, and so we chanted Hare Krishna together, the whole mantra. And so I'm thinking, okay, this person, so he's made some advancement. He's said the holy names, so he's made some advancement. But let's say he never comes in contact, he doesn't do anything else for the rest of his life. And at the end of his life, he thinks of whatever, he's attached to whatever. Does that, is he, or all these people, if they're attached to something, are they going down? Even if they've said one Maha Mantra or something, or
no, they're safe. That's safe, and that's what Krishna says. That Mahato Vajad is losing the human body, the human birth. So meaning that any little tiny, just a tiny thing, just being exposed, can save him of losing the human life.
Even like cow eating.
Even like that. Yes. I mean, that's my understanding. That's, literally what it says. So therefore, the greatest welfare for humanity at large is Harinam Sankirtan. They don't know. They see you. Some may think annoying. They don't know. We just save you from the greatest fear of human. You were destined to become a dog, and now you take birth as a human being, and next life you take more prasadam and chant more Hare Krishna. A little more, and like that. You finish. It's already started. It's done. You start in the path of devotional service. It's done. Lord Chaitanya's mercy have already cut on you. So that's the job of the devotee. That's the faith that we have, really. It's the prime benediction for humanity at large. The spreading of this chanting of the holy name. It's amazing. It's just completely amazing. And it's fun just to go there, and just imagine if you make them, positive about it, that they smile, they clap, they dance. If just not just passively passing by and listen, but the ones who actually react to it, like, how nice, you know. It's like it's such a, you know, they're connecting with Krishna in a favorable way, you know, and that's what Srila Rupa Goswami described. That moment is like pure devotional service. That moment that they just react positively to, then, you know, it's tremendous. Anyway, stop here. Garantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.